$4 billion. Defense contracts, the biggest defense export in Australian history. And it went to Canada. Not to the United States, not to the United Kingdom, to Canada. $2.6 billion in uranium, $5.5 billion in trade deals. None of it with America. The Pentagon was next in line for this radar. Canada cut them out, bought it first from Australia. Then Carney flew to India, signed the largest energy deal between the two countries ever. Uranium locked in through 2035. Then he flew to Sydney, landed today. First Canadian Prime Minister to address Australia's Parliament in nearly 20 years. 10 days, 3 countries, $9.5 billion, a new network, and Washington is not in it. If you want to understand these shifts before they hit the news, subscribe and hit the bell. Here is what Canada bought. A radar that sees over the horizon, literally. Normal radar stops at the curve of the Earth. This one does not. It bounces signals off the ionosphere, detects ships, aircraft, missiles 3,000 kilometers out. Australia built it, operates it, has for decades. Covers 37,000 square kilometers of ocean and sky, one of the most advanced surveillance systems on Earth. Canada is putting it across the Arctic, bordered to North Pole. Every northern approach monitored, alongside a $420 million investment in permanent military presence in the Arctic. New hubs, new airstrips, year-round forces. This replaces the North Warning System built during the Cold War, designed for Soviet bombers, not for modern missiles, not for hypersonic threats. That system is obsolete. This one is not. Now here is what makes this sting. America wanted this radar. The US was supposed to buy first. Australia was preparing the sale for Washington. Canada jumped the line, picked up the phone, made the call, signed the deal before America could. $4 billion. Australia's largest defense export in history. And the reason Australia said yes to Canada over America? That story starts inside the White House. And it starts with a man named Kevin Rudd. October 2025, White House. Anthony Albanese sits across from Donald Trump. First bilateral meeting. Took months to arrange. Kevin Rudd is at the table. Australia's ambassador. Former prime minister. Decades of experience. Speaks fluent Mandarin. One of the most respected diplomats in the Pacific. Before he became ambassador, Rudd did something that would come back to haunt him. Years earlier, he called Trump the most destructive president in history. Called him a traitor to the West. Those posts were deleted, but Trump never forgets. A reporter brings it up during the meeting. Trump turns to Rudd, on camera, in front of the world. I do not like you either, and I probably never will. Australia's most senior representative in Washington, humiliated at the table he was supposed to sit at as an equal. In front of cameras, in front of his prime minister, in front of the world. By January, Rudd was gone, forced out. Australia's ambassador to the United States, a man who had served his country for decades, removed because of a personal grudge. Then the tariffs came. 10% on most Australian exports, 50% on steel, 50% on aluminum, 25% on cars. Trump threatened over 100% on medicine. Australia asked for an exemption. They pointed to the free trade agreement. They pointed to 80 years of fighting alongside America. Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf, Afghanistan, Iraq. Every single war, not one missed. Denied. 80 years of loyalty. And this is what they got back. Ambassador mocked. Exports taxed. Exemption rejected. That is not strain. That is demolition. That is a relationship being systematically dismantled by a president who treats allies like subordinates and partnerships like transactions. If this is making sense of what you're seeing, hit the like button. It pushes this to more people who need it. Now look at what Carney did before he even got to Australia. He went to India first. 4 days, Mumbai, New Delhi. 16 months ago, they expelled diplomats. Frozen relations. Barely speaking. Canada accused Indian agents of being involved in a killing on Canadian soil. India denied it. Both sides pulled their diplomats. It was over. The relationship was dead. Carney walked in and reopened everything. Sat down with Narendra Modi. Signed 5 deals. 5.5 billion total. The centerpiece? Uranium. 2.6 billion. 22 million pounds of nuclear fuel. Saskatchewan to India. Locked from 2027 through 2035. Think about that timeline. Frozen to 5.5 billion in 16 months. That is not diplomacy. That is alchemy. Modi praised Carney by name, called him a friend, said the momentum in every area of cooperation is because of Carney's leadership. They set a target to double trade to $70 billion a year by 2030. And they launched negotiations for a full free trade agreement, targeting a signing at the G20 summit in Miami this December. None of that runs through Washington. Not $1, not one contract, not one shipment. Now let me connect this to something that happened 3 months ago, because none of this is random. Carney announced the plan on stage, out loud, Davos, January 2026, World Economic Forum. Every global leader in the room. He said the US-led order is over, called it a rupture, not a transition, a rupture. Then 6 words that will be studied for decades. If we are not at the table, we are on the menu. He got the standing ovation at Davos. That almost never happens. World leaders do not applaud when someone declares the American order dead. They did. Hours later, same stage, same room. Trump's turn. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark. 2 days later, Anthony Albanese publicly sided with Carney, said he agreed, invited him to address Australia's parliament. The president threatened Canada on a global stage. Within 48 hours, another American ally chose Carney. Not quietly, on camera, on national television. That was January. This week, Carney showed up with $9.5 billion in signed deals. Words became money. The speech became contracts. My question for you, does this alliance hold, or does U.S. pressure break it? Drop your answer below. Here is why this does not reverse. That radar takes years to build, years to deploy across the Arctic. $4 billion in construction, thousands of jobs. Military infrastructure that will operate for decades. You do not cancel that with a phone call. You do not renegotiate a military system halfway through construction. You operate it together for generations. The uranium runs through 2035. India's reactors do not switch suppliers overnight. That fuel is locked. That relationship is locked. Those contracts are signed. The free trade deal targets December. That is a legal framework, not a handshake, not a memorandum of understanding, a binding agreement between sovereign nations that will govern hundreds of billions in trade for years to come. Last October, before all of this, Canada and Australia signed a critical minerals agreement. Lithium, cobalt, rare earths, the minerals that go into every battery, every fighter jet, every semiconductor, every advanced weapon system in the Western world. That supply chain is being built between them, not through Washington. Carney and Albanese both won their elections the same week last spring. Both center-left. Both carried by voters who rejected Trump-style politics. Both popular at home. Neither facing elections soon. They have time. They have mandate. They have momentum. This is not a handshake. This is rewiring. New partners, new supply chains, new defense systems, new mineral agreements, built without Washington, operated without Washington, sustained without Washington. Markets that shift do not shift back. Supply chains that reroute do not return. Defense alliances that form do not dissolve because someone changes their mind. $4 billion in defense. $5.5 billion with India. Critical minerals locked in. And Japan is next. 3 continents, 10 days, and every dollar of it used to flow through Washington. A country told it lives because of America just proved it does not. That is not a headline. That is a structural shift. Structural shifts do not reverse. Let me take you deeper into the radar deal, because the strategic implications are larger than most people realize. The Jindalee Operational Radar Network, JORN, is not just a piece of military hardware. It is a surveillance system that covers the entire northern approach to Australia. Ships, aircraft, missiles, all detected at ranges that conventional radar cannot touch. It has been operating for decades, constantly upgraded, constantly improved. It is one of Australia's most closely guarded technological assets. Selling it to Canada means integrating Canadian and Australian air defense systems. Means sharing data in real time. Means coordinating responses to threats detected over the Arctic and the Pacific simultaneously. Means building a joint operational framework that does not include the United States. The $420 million Arctic investment is not separate from this. It is the other half of the same strategy. Canada is building year-round military presence in the Arctic. New forward operating bases. New airstrips capable of handling fighter aircraft. New surveillance posts monitoring every approach from the north. Combine that with JORN coverage, and Canada will have the most comprehensive northern surveillance network in the world. Russia will be watched. China will be watched. Everyone will be watched. And the data will flow to Canberra as easily as it flows to Ottawa. Now ask yourself, where is Washington in this architecture? The answer is nowhere. Not because they were excluded, but because they excluded themselves. When Trump humiliated Kevin Rudd, when he imposed tariffs on a loyal ally, when he denied exemptions despite 80 years of shared sacrifice, he sent a message. That message was received. And this radar deal is the reply. Let me talk about the India piece, because it is equally significant. India is the world's largest democracy, the fastest growing major economy, a nuclear power, a country that every Western nation has been courting for decades. The United States has tried for years to lock in a strategic partnership with India. To varying degrees, it has succeeded. But energy, uranium, that has always been complicated. India is not a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. It has a complex relationship with the International Nuclear Order. Selling uranium to India has historically required navigating layers of diplomatic and legal complexity. Carney walked through all of it in 4 days. $2.6 billion in uranium sales, locked through 2035. That is not a one-time shipment. That is a decade-long relationship. That is Indian reactors designed around Canadian fuel. That is Indian energy policy dependent on Canadian supply. And the free trade agreement they are negotiating targets signing at the G20 in Miami. Think about the symbolism. In Miami, on American soil, with the world watching, Canada and India can sign a deal that formalizes their economic integration, while the United States watches from the sidelines. That is not a coincidence. Now, let me bring this back to Australia, because the parliamentary address matters more than most people understand. The last Canadian Prime Minister to address Australia's Parliament was Stephen Harper in 2006, 20 years ago. That is how rarely this happens. It is an honor reserved for the closest of allies, for moments of historic significance. Carney used that platform to lay out a vision, not of partnership with the United States, of partnership with Australia, with India, with Japan, with anyone willing to engage on terms of mutual respect. He did not mention Trump by name. He did not need to. The contrast was obvious. Here was a leader speaking in complete sentences, offering concrete agreements, signing billion-dollar deals, while across the Pacific, the American president was posting grievances on social media and demanding loyalty oaths. The contrast was not lost on anyone in that chamber. So where does this go from here? There are three trajectories worth watching. The first is acceleration. Other countries see what Canada just pulled off. They see a path to economic security that does not run through Washington. Japan signs its own deals. South Korea follows. The European Union deepens its engagement. The network grows. America becomes one node among many, not the central hub. The second is consolidation. Canada and Australia lock in what they have built and then pause. They wait to see how Washington responds. If the next administration is different, if the rhetoric changes, if the tariffs disappear, maybe they leave the door open for reintegration. But the infrastructure remains. The contracts remain. The trust, once broken, does not fully return. The third is fracture. Washington responds with more tariffs, more threats, more demands. Canada and Australia respond by accelerating their pivot. Japan and India join more formally. A new economic bloc emerges, one that explicitly excludes the United States. The Western Alliance, the post-war order that has kept the peace for 80 years, splits along lines that were unimaginable a decade ago. I do not know which path we are on. Nobody does. But I know which path Carney is preparing for. He is preparing for all of them, because that is what disciplined leaders do. They build options. They create flexibility. They ensure that no matter what happens, their country can survive and thrive. And right now, Carney has more options than Washington ever anticipated. More deals in motion, more partnerships forming, more infrastructure being built, more alternatives becoming real. There was a moment in Carney's Australian address that captured this perfectly. He said, "We are building a network of like-minded nations who believe that sovereignty matters, that rules matter, that agreements matter. We are building it because we must, and we are building it because we can. We are building it because we can." That is the sentence that should worry Washington. Not because it is threatening, because it is true. Canada can build this network. Australia can build this network. India can be part of it. Japan can be part of it. The infrastructure exists. The money exists. The political will exists. And every day that Washington spends threatening allies instead of partnering with them, that network grows stronger. The radar will be built. The uranium will flow. The free trade deal will be signed. The critical minerals will be mined and processed and shipped. All of it happening without American participation. All of it happening because American policy made it necessary. A country told it lives because of America just proved it does not. That is not a headline. That is a structural shift. Structural shifts do not reverse. If you want to understand where this is going, watch what happens next with Japan. Carney's team has been in Tokyo for weeks. Quiet meetings, technical briefings, the kind of work that happens before the cameras show up. When that deal is announced, and it will be announced, the map will be complete. Pacific Partnership, Indian engagement, Arctic defense, critical minerals, uranium, radar, trade. All of it connected. All of it bypassing Washington. Subscribe now. Hit the bell. Because when Japan signs, the story enters a new phase. And you will want to understand what it means before the headlines get it wrong. 10 days, 3 countries, $9.5 billion, a new network. And Washington is not in it. That is not a temporary adjustment. That is a permanent realignment. And it started with 6 words in Davos. If we are not at the table, we are on the menu. Carney decided Canada would not be on the menu. He built the table instead.